Reader's Theater, presented by Stacy Greening for EDU 5373, Balanced Literacy, with Professor Bondre. Ladies and gentlemen, introducing Reader's Theater. What is Reader's Theater? Reader's Theater is students reading a play, poem, or other text after practicing it for fluency several times. Why incorporate Reader's Theater? Reader's Theater is great for students who are practicing their fluency. Fluency is the ability to be able to read accurately with expression. This is going to be fun. So the big question here is, what is fluency? Some educators are still operating under the premise that fluency is speed. It is more than that. This is a picture of several of my students several weeks ago who were performing Where the Wild Things Are. After I took the picture, I was especially pleased with the way they were looking at their script and seemed to be completely engaged. I was also happy to see that most of them had the scripts down so that you could see their faces clearly. Students are actually exhibiting assisted reading also here, which will come up in a few minutes. But assisted reading is when the students are reading and they are reading a text while simultaneously listening to a fluent rendering of the same text. It kind of reminds me of the old-fashioned follow along, class follow along. We've always known it was important, but I don't know that we really necessarily knew why it was so important. And it's called assisted reading. So we'll talk about fluency for just a minute. Fluency is several things. It's the ability to read words in a text with sufficient accuracy, and we all know that. It is also the ability to read with automaticity, to read the words correctly and effortlessly. This allows the reader to attend to the meaning. And lastly, it's the ability to read with prosody, to read with appropriate expression and phrasing. I like to think of the funny phrase I use with my students every year. I'll write this up on the board. I'll write, "Let's eat Grandma." And the kids laugh and laugh, and I write up another sentence and I put, "Let's eat, comma, Grandma." Let's eat, Grandma. And we talk about the two different meanings and how that period saved Grandma's life. So when you start thinking about assessments for fluency, the one thing that I've noticed is that some assessments like Ames-Webb only measures the accuracy piece. It does not measure automaticity or prosody. It does have a comprehension piece to it, but many feel it's not very reliable or authentic. The main point here is that most fluency assessments are only measuring speed. However, or hopefully, there are people who are working on that. So why incorporate Reader's Theater into the classroom? English language learners, scholars point out, benefit from participating in Reader's Theater as fluency is often something they struggle with. And another why. Well, research has demonstrated that assisted reading and repeated readings lead to improvements in fluency on text that students have not previously encountered. Wow, that blows me away. In this picture, again, students are reading Where the Wild Things Are. And assisted reading is when a reader is reading a text while at the same time listening to a fluent rendering of the same text. Listening and following along to a book previously recorded is assisted reading. It's why our teachers always reminded us to follow along. I also noticed that on this day when the students performed Where the Wild Things Are, After they had practiced 3 to 4 times, and I had given them 5 to 6 minutes each time they practiced, I noticed that one of my students who was dismissed from ELL a year ago, I did notice that she struggled a little with the fluency and with the vocabulary. She did a fine job and she made her way through it, but I could sense the struggle within her. But what I think is amazing is what Rosinski and others have pointed out is that by her being involved in this reading of Where the Wild Things Are, it will actually help her with her fluency in other things that she has never even come across. As a teacher who has taught for 17 years, I have to admit that I have never had an ELL student. I have had 4 students who have been previously dismissed from the program. Our school just happens to not have that program. So I have struggled with the fact that I may not know the best way to teach ELL students since I have not had any real training in that. But because of our readings, I feel a lot better at knowing that what these students need will be practice and fluency and vocabulary. I think I can provide those 2 things pretty easily in the classroom. And some of our readings have indicated that in the future, 40% of our students will be considered ELL. So we really do not have a choice about how to go about helping these students. I am hoping that through the Common Core that will be one of the things that is addressed as far as professional development. I know I could use some more professional development. And another reason why it should be incorporated into a classroom is for authenticity. When students are engaged in theatrical readings, they have a real purpose for reading. Suddenly, the reading is fun, interactive, and collaborative. A non-threatening atmosphere leads to building confidence and enjoyment. According to Susan Finney, who is a retired teacher who conducts seminars about improving the art of reading and contributed to Educator's World, quoted, "Reader's theater allows children the luxury of lingering over a story, acting it out many times so they come to understand all its nuances." And authenticity again. I had to share this story. When I was in 4th grade, we performed the Lewis and Clark expedition. I was Meriwether Lewis. I have some great memories of that. For some reason, I've never learned much more about that time in our country's history, and when I needed to, I relied on that 4th grade schema. The next few pages deal with how you would incorporate Reader's Theater in your classroom. First, you would choose a script that is level appropriate. Here are a few great sources to get scripts. Next, explain to students that they will use their voices to convey meaning. There's no need for big theatrical props, stages, etc. If there is a book associated with the play, read it ahead of time. Read the script aloud to the students if possible, to point out difficult words, nuances, and to address any misunderstandings. Later, as students become used to this strategy, the student can incorporate the gradual release of responsibility, and students can work as a group to problem solve. Some students may even want to write their own scripts. Differentiation. Assign parts and give students time to practice. Another thought on this is to assign the part right before the performance so the student practices all the parts. This would be especially good for the higher readers. Have students highlight their parts in the scripts. Give students a few minutes every day for a few days to practice their parts. They may also want to take them home to practice. This is also a really good time to use Tubaloos in your classroom. If you've never seen them or used them, they just look like little plastic telephones. and the students can whisper read and listen to themselves and how they sound. Next, give each group a chance to practice together. This is that collaboration piece, and they really do help each other out with suggestions. And we talk about good ways to give each other criticisms that are constructive. And then lastly, perform the plays. You can do this lots of different ways. You can perform in front of other classes if you have the time. You can do it just with your class. You can do it in groups. Lots of different ways to finish that out. And then lastly, lead a discussion about how they did. Make sure that you let them know that they're not to use names if they think someone did a not a very good job, or even if they did a great job, but to use the examples instead. And pretty soon they really do start figuring out, who are showing really great signs of being fluent and who needs to practice that. So I have really thought about how will Reader's Theater fit into the Common Core state standards. I think there are a lot of different ways, but these are some of the ones that stood out to me. Reader's Theater supports the ELL students with fluency and vocabulary. Reader's Theater is authentic. Reader's Theater is collaborative in nature. The Common Core supports balanced literacy, which recognizes the need for a variety of ways to teach reading. And lastly, Reader's Theater supports the gradual release of responsibility. Cross-curricular concepts in science, social studies, etc. can be found in a wide variety of Reader's Theater resources. That's the Common Core talking about integrating into the content area. I hope we can all find a way to incorporate this wonderful strategy. One of the things that we do in second grade at the end of the year is we do a big fairy tale unit, and my class performs a fairy tale, a fractured fairy tale, and we practice it for several weeks. We start with 4 different fairy tales, and like I said, they're fractured fairy tales, and we perform them for the first grade. At this point in the year, we do add a few props, a few other little extra things. Some of the kids actually do memorize their lines, but of course that's not required. And then we invite the first grade to come and watch. And every year, those kids that I get for second grade, they just feel so connected to second grade by that. They feel like the kids that have me, they feel like they know me, and that we have a connection. And all year long, those kids will be asking about, are we going to do the fairy tale plays? Do we get to do those? And we do that every year and have done that every year for 6 or 7 years now. So I hope that you got something out of this, and I hope that you enjoyed it. I think the book has great strategies for all of us. Thank you, and have a great day.